So hey everyone, welcome to Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success, the podcast for software sales professionals who want to sell better. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, make Software Sales Simplified your go-to resource for actionable insights and real-world strategies. So you can join us right here on your favorite podcast channel. We'll move to success together. Today, I'm joined not only with my co-host, Kevin Donville. I'm Matt Long, by the way. My co-host, Kevin Donville, and we have a special guest, Brandon Lopez from Persimmon Marketing. Brandon, I will just let you do your own intro, so take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Matt and Kevin, for having me today. I'm really excited to be here on your podcast, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, can I start with a quick anecdote? So if I look a little bit higher up, it's because I'm at my standing desk. And one of my New Year's resolutions was to not sit in a chair for 10 hours a day. So I'll tell my wife you can check that one off.
Very good. Very good.
That's great. So, Brandon, we worked with you a while back at a company called Tea Leaf, and which eventually was acquired by IBM. And we had say the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds in terms of working with a smaller startup. Even though Tea Leaf had been around for quite a few years, it was certainly not the size of IBM. And then transitioning to a behemoth like IBM, that was quite a change. Though I would say from a sales perspective, and Kevin, you can back me up on this, I actually had some of my best success once we were underneath the IBM family. I think part of that was because all of the other things and ELAs they can throw you into, which was kind of nice. For me personally, though, after about 2 years or so, IBM started getting their claws in a little bit more in terms of what we were doing. And I just determined that that wasn't for me. I really liked a little bit more of the nimbleness of the startup world, et cetera. And I went on elsewhere. But maybe you could tell me a little bit about your journey from there and then how you started Persimmon Marketing, decided to go off on your own.
Yeah, Matt. Well, actually, what you just described is I can really relate to in that, for the first, call it 5 years of my career in Silicon Valley out here in California, I started out in product marketing and customer marketing, smaller companies, and really enjoyed the ability to make a big impact. Loved it. Went to a few different startups, was trying to figure out where I wanted to eventually end up. I went to a little social media startup in downtown Redwood City a long time ago and did a little bit of startup work there. And then LinkedIn noticed when they were building the sales solutions team, which was LinkedIn Sales Navigator, the product that we all know and love in sales marketing. I was one of the first external marketing hires for that team. And
Wow.
I've still kept in touch with Rolf, who hired me there. He was the VP of marketing. And that was so much fun because we were a startup really within LinkedIn. So we had some backing, like an IBM level, not quite that large, but it was still fun because it was a small marketing team. There were only 2 or 3 of us at the time. And the sales team was pretty large and growing, but not massive, not as big as if you think of LinkedIn or Microsoft sales. I mean, at the time, it was probably maybe 30 AEs, some SEs, and some SDRs, plus our team. So that was really fun. And, at the time, I ended up working at Salesforce and some large enterprise companies. So I have that sort of experience. I moved more from product marketing into demand generation and marketing operations and the tech systems, which was really interesting. And then I did something crazy 7 years ago. I got a little tired of Silicon Valley traffic. I was doing the, if anyone knows the Bay Area.
Understandable, for sure. After an hour and a half each way, it gets old.
Yeah. East Bay to San Francisco commute, or South Bay, if you're in the Bay Area, that 680 corridor. I had enough. And so I became an entrepreneur 7 years ago when my wife had started up Persimmon Marketing when we had our son. And I joined her full time 7 years ago to help build out Persimmon Marketing. We're a full service agency. We typically work with startups and SMBs. And, like I said, why we work with those type of companies, because we can make a big impact. They often just outsource the entire marketing function to us. And then we work really closely with the sales leader or a business owner on the revenue side. And I think a lot of that just comes from my experience. I mean, I've worked with sales teams. We work together closely, that Tea Leaf. And honestly, the Tea Leaf team had a big impact on my career because you guys were so great. You guys are like some of the best sales engineers. And I love traveling around. I mean, I tell people I was like the product marketing guy that would go to Minnesota in the winter with the sales team to close a deal. It really impacted, I think, the way that I think about marketing and revenue and try to be closer to it, help our clients achieve their goals.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, you went from product marketing to more of the demand gen and things like that. How was that transition for you, and what really appealed to you about getting the message? Because product marketing is about messaging, right? But when you're actually taking that message and driving it to customers or potential customers and getting them to bite on specific value propositions and things, what was that like for you, that transition?
Well, I would say it was an interesting transition, to be honest. I mean, I think if you can find demand gen people for a team that really enjoy product, I mean, that's a huge benefit because, unfortunately right now, a lot of demand generation is extremely tactical, right? It's not a very strategic function. And, it's sad to say this, don't take this the wrong way, demand gen folks, because there's a lot of really good ones out there. Growth marketing and growth hacking and field marketing's back. Events are back. Sales kickoffs are back, which we'll talk about later. But, some demand gen people I work with, they didn't even know anything about the product. It was just, they were really good at executing programs, right? And working closely with the sales team, and the sales team and the product team were the product experts, right? So what I felt like I could help do was, given my product marketing background and just thinking a lot about positioning and messaging and what are competitors doing, and then how campaigns could reflect that sort of positioning in a better way, and then how you could create better sales enablement assets that actually have up-to-date information. I mean, I don't want to name a name, but I remember a Tea Leaf salesperson, very experienced. I was on a flight with him and I looked over and he had like a 5-year-old sales deck. I mean, it was the oldest sales deck I had ever seen. And I, as a marketing person, I just started choking on my beverage on the flight. It was like, he's going to present that at the meeting, so, part of what I get.
If they buy a 5-year-old product offering, then they're going to be thrilled when they actually get the product installed, right?
That's right.
Hopefully.
Having sat in the sales enablement chair for a couple of years, and having to lead that, I can understand. We used to run into that all the time, right? Salespeople become very comfortable with how to leverage those decks. They know them inside out and backwards, and they've used them in multiple different circumstances. So that's their comfort zone, and they feel like they can be very effective when they're presenting them. But to your point, it's like, but the product's moved on. We have all this additional value we can create, and they're like, yeah, I don't care, go away. This is my neck on the line if I don't sell this. So it can be very hard to get them just to let go of those old tools that they're very interested in. So I can appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, if you think about a sales presentation, and we're going to talk about storytelling, right? You guys do a great job at that. And it's something we try to do with our clients. But I mean, the front third of the presentation is a lot of the kind of setup story. And that's the thing that might not change a lot every year. But the second part of the deck, when you start talking about, solution capabilities and product, and, maybe you have a new platform that you just launched that year, or a new set of features that are targeting a new customer base, like that all needs to be updated. And that's the part that really scares me when you start getting to that part of the deck and you see the first product slide and it's last year's stack.
Yeah. Or last year's customer list with the last year's stories, and maybe one or two of them have left and gone on to competitors. And you're just sitting there horrified that anyone's showing that, because you really don't want them like sharing that with anybody. So yeah, it can be very terrifying.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to get to kind of sales kickoffs and things in a bit, because it is sales kickoff season. So I know you have some ideas and best practices around that. So I want to have a discussion there. But one thing that caught my attention as you were talking, and a little pet peeve of mine is, when there's a disconnect between the market messaging and then the outbound, lead gen and getting meetings set, et cetera, that it's not really teed up correctly, or the messaging is misaligned with what the sales team knows and what they're coming in with. I'm just curious from your perspective, since you worked with all sorts of different levels of companies at different stages, how often are those things misaligned, and what can we do to make sure, and what works best in terms of having that aligned all the way through the funnel?
Great question. How often are they misaligned? Almost all the time.
100%.
Now, as the organization gets bigger, I feel like misalignment grows just because of, large organizational challenges, right, that you run into. And a lot of companies use like these systems to house content that might not get updated as frequently as it should. On the flip side, startups are usually very aligned, right? Startups and smaller SMB companies, there's a lot more communication happening every day. They're a lot more fluid, startups especially. And so you don't normally see that much sort of messaging, positioning disalignment. But you do have a lot of debates at smaller companies about, what should be the right go-to-market strategy? What's the right audience? If the product folks are thinking about new features that tweak who you would target with your ICP as a marketing and, an outbound person, and then that's not communicated quickly enough in the startup world, that can be a real challenge. So, it's everywhere, at different degrees. Now, I will say one of the things I forgot to mention, which is why I'm excited about this next phase of business, is AI, right? And so I'm an advisor on an AI startup called My Sidecar AI. And it's a marketing strategy and execution platform. And really the whole goal of it is to create positioning, messaging, story, and have those set as a stake in the ground. And then sales and marketing are all singing from the same hymn sheet, but you can also create new sheets quickly, right? So if you're at a startup and you think, we really should be going after, government agencies in addition to, private sector companies, the beauty of LLMs and generative AI and so many great tools out there right now, you can spin up an entire new positioning strategy campaign set in minutes that's similar value proposition to what your company does, just a slight different tweak. So, where in the old days, it would take product marketing, a month to do that, to be honest, at any size company. And then train everyone. You guys know, right? Then training all the time and then keeping it updated. Right. And then guess what? A month later to start up, the CEO wants to test something new, or the sales leader wants to try a new partner-driven go-to-market strategy. Well, guess what? It all changes again. And, I'm really excited about this next frontier we're in right now, where AI can all help us do our job so much more effectively.
Yeah, I think everyone is kind of struggling and frantically trying to figure out how best to apply AI to all sorts of processes. And I think the sales, the outreach and all that is a really interesting one. And in fact, I might want to have you back for a discussion just about AI in sales and marketing and lead gen, because I think that's a full discussion unto itself. But for the sake of time, let's move on. But before we do that, Kevin, I know that, you have been involved in the trenches a lot around messaging and taking the messaging that product marketing is giving you, kind of translating in a way that salespeople can understand and leverage and act upon. What are your thoughts and what have you seen around this?
My experiences have been very similar to Brandon's. And in smart organizations, the interconnection between the different groups that control and manage how the message is going to be used in various parts of the organization, that can work very effectively. In fact, if it's not working effectively, that's usually an indication that the organization's not doing well. So I'd say that it's almost like a barometer for the overall health and success of the organization, because you can't have that where you can't be out in the market saying different things, stressing different areas of your value proposition, and expect to have consistent results. It's just not going to happen. For example, one of the companies I was working at when I first started getting involved in marketing and messaging, and I was brought in because this had been brought to the attention of leadership, that wasn't happening. I was brought in, and what I did was I ended up talking with the head of product marketing and the head of marketing in general. And the disconnect between the two groups was so vast that the head of marketing not only asked me to put together a training program, but they asked me to teach the pitch, the elevator pitch, to all of the marketing people. And they had to pass that so that everybody understood the core message about what it is we were trying to do. So it's critically important, but sadly, it's an area that I think all organizations struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it so many times over the years, and there's not an easy fix, and things change. So it's not like there's any perfect way. It's always about just trying to improve, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the ultimate thing with any of this. I do want to pivot though, because I want to make sure that we can talk a little about kind of sales kickoffs and things like that, because we've all experienced those over the years, many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think 20 plus for me, right? And I'm sure similar for you guys as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes for a good sales kickoff, not necessarily from end to end, but some of the things that you can do that will have an actual impact on success of your company and of your company's sales going into the year. So, Brandon, I just want to start with you. You've talked a little bit about how you've been involved with sales kickoffs and some of the things that you see as kind of as really highlights or best practices that should be carried out.
Yeah, so let's start with a fun mental exercise first. Okay, everyone who's watching or listening, stop and think about all the sales kickoffs you've been to, or QBRs, quarterly business reviews, or annual planning meetings, or whatever, right? There's all sorts of different flavors of this. Bring the team together, build camaraderie, talk about the plan, commit to goals, right? That's usually what you do with these things. I was thinking about that. Yeah, Matt, I'm about 20 as well, right? 20 sales kickoffs. And I can only remember like 2 or 3 that were memorable out of the 20, to be honest. From I don't know, content, product, they're always great. I call it, right? It's dinner and decks, a lot of dinner and decks, a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of slides, a lot of late nights with the team.
I would throw drinking in there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
I might be past A now, but yeah.
Right, that's right. And, and I thought that was kind of a strange realization for me to just think about. I could really only remember 3 or 4 in my life that I thought were awesome. And, and I think that kind of gets to why not? And so, when I make that statement, the way my analogy is, I think about these companies as 3 different flavors of ice cream, right? You've got enterprise, which is one flavor, very different. You've got, sort of mid-market, smaller companies, and then you've got startups, because all 3 run these things extremely differently, right?
Yeah.
And so on the enterprise side, the most memorable one I had was when I was at LinkedIn, and we had a really great workshop where we brought in outside speakers. They were, methodology experts. It was a few-hour workshop. It broke up all the decks that, where you look around the room, everyone's looking at their phones because they can't look at another PowerPoint slide on a screen.
Right. Exactly.
You get all the digital fatigue. So, bringing in subject matter experts that are going to help you improve your sales and marketing or product or whatever your focus is for that event. I mean, I think that is key. And then moving down to the other flavors of ice cream, right? Startups and mid-sized companies. A lot of it is they just don't know what the framework should be. Or mid-sized companies have a framework, but it's not very good usually. It's not very formalized. It's usually like annual planning and that's it. They're usually not doing QBRs and follow-up quarterly activities. So, I mean, one of the best ones I remember was a small company where I brought in the framework of how to run it and why you need to be data-driven and why you need CRM or whatever system of record you have with reporting and analytics, and then bringing those metrics into the meeting and talking about the programs and the big initiatives and aligning those to, essentially your funnel. That was really a great exercise with the startup I did. So, there's a lot of different ways to approach it.
Yeah, I think what I found a lot of times, there's a big just motivation, rah. This is the new stuff coming out. Everyone's excited about it, but then afterwards, how do you? It doesn't actually manifest itself in any way. Hey, it's like, okay, I heard this product's come out. Is it out now, or is this coming out in a year? Can I sell this? That, and then there's all these follow-up sessions afterwards where they're trying to actually make it actionable. So I think there's a ton of value, of course, to having, people being excited about the company, excited about your product and your position and what you're going to do, all those things. But you need to temper it a bit, I think, with some practical application and some skills that you can then take forward, right? And I think for the ones that I've really enjoyed, there's been small workshops, like you said, a lot of times it's outside of the company. They bring in someone, that actually teaches you a couple skills about, being more curious and asking better questions, or telling stories, or all the things that we, Kevin, you and I talk about, because those are the lasting things that I can actually take with me from this kickoff that I can start implementing immediately.
Agree.
But Kevin, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, I know that you've also been involved with quite a few, and also from the enablement perspective.
Yeah. Funny, you guys were talking and I was sitting there. I've been the person on the receiving side consuming, and I've been the person on the planning side as a sales leader where, people are seeking my input as to what they needed. And then I've actually had to build it. And boy, it really changes your perspective when you're responsible for building it. You realize how hard it is to build these things in a way that you can deliver value that satisfies such a broad group of people that you're trying to enable, and you're trying to make better and get ready for the coming sales year. And it was also funny. I was listening to something you were saying, Brandon, and it really plugged in my mind. How many do I actually remember? There are a lot I remember, and not for the right reasons, right? For completely the wrong reasons. But here's the thing though, is like, there's still something that you take away from every sales kickoff, whether you dramatically remember it as being something that was awe-inspiring, or to Matt's point, it's something that brought the team together. So there's always value in these QBRs and these opportunities to get together as a team and exchange ideas in the flesh. That they're far more satisfactory and they move the needle more. But I would have to say that some of the biggest things I've seen people making mistakes on, and as a result, the ones that I've got the least amount of satisfaction out of, is when there hasn't been any planning that involved the field, involved the various teams that are going to participate, because their needs are different. And this usually happens in the smaller organizations because it's a small tactical, and tactically agile type of organization. They assume that they understand each other and they know what each other needs. So there's an assumption made at a high level, and then the content gets developed and it falls flat and it just misses the mark. But ones where there's been that engagement and people understand what the field needs. Hey, we want to know more about how the product works, or we're dealing with a lot of competitive messaging that's really taking us sideways. We need, things that will help us deal with this. And to the point both of you guys made, it's not just talking at the audience. When I've been engaged and made an active participant in the consumption and mastery of the material, and also being able to influence it in the moment at the sales kickoff, where people could, call BS on something if they thought it was wrong, or say, that's great, but we need more, and this is what we need, and then make that a dynamic exchange. Those are the ones where I've walked away going, that was super valuable. And that's something we could continue building on over the course of the year. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Mm-hmm.
So great points, Kevin. So for the marketers that are listening or watching, one thing I urge you to do, especially if you're at a mid-size or a startup company, Sales Kickoff is an amazing opportunity for marketing people, and they don't take advantage of it. Meaning, it's a bit of a logistical challenge, to be honest,
Right.
because Q4, typically, if you're on the calendar fiscal year, sales is working so hard to close business through December. They work their tails off. Then guess what? They take, a week or two off in January. And so then everybody kind of comes back and they're scrambling to put together content because you can't have sales kickoff, in March usually, right? You're basically, you lose Q1. So if you think your company could be doing better at this from a marketing perspective, go to your leadership in November or December and offer to help. Because one of the things we hear a lot, and one of my frustrations with the way marketing has kind of developed over time, is it's become very tactical. And so marketing might not even have a seat at the table with sales and product. And if you feel that way as a marketing director or a marketing leader, Sales Kickoff can be a great way for you to be seen as a strategic person within the org. Just go help, take the reins, take some of the pressure off the sales and product folks when they're busy trying to close business, and you'll get invited to the table a lot more often.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point right there, because it does involve all aspects of the company. But a lot of times it just comes into this team's going to talk about this, and then this team's going to talk about this, and then this team's going to talk about this. And it's helpful information, but it's really not what the kickoff is for. I don't think you can do that through other channels after the fact. So I think having a coordinated effort is something that's definitely valuable, but isn't done very often as well. What other things have worked that you've seen, Brandon, in terms of a sales kickoff? Is there a particular type of activity or things that you remember that went really well?
Well, I think a lot of it is, stuff we touched on, right? I think if product and marketing are a lot more involved, they can be stronger, especially if the presentations are more as a co-functional team, right? Or cross-functional team versus, just like you said, random team gets up and talks about their top 10 initiative, and then the next team gets up. So, ingraining the teams together in advance is good. Like I said, just fun ways to break up the monotony of decks and dinners, right? It's like, even if it's, tactical things, creating leave behinds and, banners and signage, and, maybe you do a team competition and then you bring in expert speakers, like just honestly things a marketing person might think a little bit more about than a sales leader might, So, my recommendation would be, get the marketing team involved. They can add some fun and some flair and hopefully make it more memorable.
Yeah. And I think also, holding the participants accountable to bringing something as opposed to just being a viewer, right? Or a recipient of this information. And doesn't mean like give them a lot of homework or things like that, because that's not what we're looking for. But I think if there's things that you can think about that you want to improve and get people talking together just personally, right? Or within your team, that helps get buy-in as well, because then you're just not sitting back like, well, okay, what are you doing here, et cetera. You could actually be part of what's going on. I'll leave with one thing, and then we'll kind of go around one more time. But one thing that was a really good activity that we had, I actually don't think it was kickoff, but I think it was like QBR. But they had, improv comedy people come in and teach us little techniques about how to do improv comedy, right? Which is, yes, and, right? It's like, which, if you think about being in sales, is a great tactic to use, right? But it's a lot of fun. It was funny. We did a lot of things that kind of got you thinking about some stuff, but just little skills like that were really helpful for me. And that's what I remembered from that kickoff for that QBR. I just want to take this time just to kind of go around and see if there's any last thoughts you have about, sales kickoffs or anything in general before we kind of wrap up here. But Kevin, would you like to start with anything?
You know what? I was listening to you talk about that, and I remember that comedy troupe, and they were hilarious. And that when it was really super effective, surprisingly, I was like, this is going to be 30 minutes of fun, but it's going to be completely useless. But it was totally engaging and useful. So with respect to that, I wholeheartedly agree that, first of all, the planning needs to start way in advance. If you're planning in January, your kickoff, yeah, you're too late. You've already missed the boat. You should be planning in October. That would be my first piece of advice. But secondly, make it engaging. Don't just sit there and talk at people, because people don't engage that way. You're being absorbed by only one small group of people that can process information that way. You need to go in and understand, and this goes down to the fundamentals of any kind of information exchanges. People process information differently, and you need to understand that. And I got a little story time about this. I actually had something else I was going to talk about earlier on, but this is a fun one. At one of the kickoffs I went to, we were coming out with a brand new release of the solution, and marketing had come in and done some very engaging, hands-on, and actually challenge the sales team, the services team, and the pre-sales team, and even the SDRs. They would show a feature and then say, how would you talk about this to the customers? And so they made it really engaging with us. So we were on the spot because we had just learned the product feature to talk about why that would be relevant. And to put a cherry on top, they gave each one of us a bag of Legos. And we had to build a Lego piece that talked about the value of the solution and then pitch this as a 30-second commercial. And I got talked into singing Stairway to 7, because it was the 7th release, Stairway to 7 in falsetto in front of over 100 people. Again, the dinners and this is where the drinking from the night before probably got me to the point where I do that. But one of the other guys did it as Sling Blade, completely in Sling Blade, and another group did it as a rap. It was hilarious, but all of us walked out of there with these ideas in our head, and we were telling the stories about how great and how hilarious this was, not realizing how we had imprinted these value messages so deeply into our brains. So I would say that's a great memory that I've got about kickoffs, and an example of how this stuff can really stick if you do it right.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon, any last thoughts from you around the SKOs and best practices there, or things that stand out?
No, I think we touched on the big ones. Make them engaging, make them fun, make them memorable. Also help improve a skill set if you can. Help improve internal alignment if you can, and then make them actionable. Right. The other fun one, since Kevin, that was such a good one. You guys both gave good examples. This doesn't always work at large organizations, but if you're at a startup or a medium-sized company, these are really good. Do the personality test workshop. And you bring in, and it's so funny. I mean, one of the funniest ones, when we did this at an SMB company, and you break up into the 4 corners of the groups with the personalities, and you look over at the red corner. I'm a red corner person, by the way. I'm blue-red product marketing sort of person, competitive. And all the reds are arguing, right, over what the solution should be to the question. And then you look over at the greens and the yellows, and they're all getting along. They're social. And it honestly, it really helps with the team dynamics. When you understand how a person communicates and thinks and the type of brain they have, I mean, it really changes the way you approach working with them. So that was a fun one that we did.
Yeah, that's a great thing, because ultimately, I mean, it's about bringing people together, and people are very different in terms of how they think, their backgrounds, etc. So anywhere they can create common ground, get and work better, is always great. I will make the pitch out here, if you are scrambling for SKO and have not done the planning starting in October, both Brandon, his organization Persimmon Marketing, has a lot of programs that are really kind of turnkey or kind of frameworks for an SKO that can help you. Kevin and I have workshops as well that can do everything from discovery to better presentations, etc. So if you are scrambling, we'd be happy to talk with you about if there's something that we can help provide a really valuable experience for your employees. Okay, I think we wrap it up. Thanks so much, Brandon, for joining us. Really appreciate just talking to you again. It's been quite a few years, but also your insights around this. It's nice to see your journey through the time, from going from the product marketing into kind of the full service marketing that you're doing now for the different types of companies.
So thank you, Lee, for tuning in to Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success. This podcast is produced by and sole property of Strategic Sales Optimization, LLC, copyright 2025. Reproduction of this in whole or in part without the express written permission of Strategic Sales Optimization, LLC is strictly prohibited. All rights reserved. So, sirs, back to you, Matt. I'm going to go and say our salutations for the day.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining. If you did enjoy this, don't forget to like or subscribe, and we will talk to you next week.
Absolutely, folks. Brandon, thanks for coming on. It was a lot of fun, sir. Brought back a lot of fond memories.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Take care.